takes you down to a place by the river. You can hear the boats go by, spend the night forever. And you know that she's half crazy, but that's why you wanna be there. She feeds you tea and oranges that come all the way from China. And just when you want to tell her that you have no love to give her, she gets you on her wavelength and she lets the river answer that you've always been her lover. You wanna travel with her, you wanna travel blind, but you think maybe you'll trust her. She's touched your perfect body with her mind. Jesus was a sailor when he walked upon the waters. He spent a long time watching from a lonely wooden tower. And when he knew for certain that only drowning men could see him, he said, all men shall be sailors then, until the sea shall free them. But he himself was broken long before the sky would open. He was forsaken, almost human. He sank beneath your wisdom like a storm. But you wanna travel with him, and you wanna travel blind, and you think maybe you'll trust him, for he's touched your perfect body with his mind. Suzanne takes you down to a place by the river. She's wearing rags and feathers from Salvation's army counters, and the sun pours down like honey on Our Lady of the Harbor, and she shows you where to look amid the garbage and the flowers. There are heroes in the river, children in the morning. They are leaning out for love. They will lean that way forever while Suzanne holds the mirror.
Good
takes you
afternoon.
down
Love and peace to all rising from the east.
to a place by the
We're acknowledging Women's Month. The honor to women, there's a distinction that must be made, especially at these times when there's somewhat of confusion. The distinction is the waters between or what a womb man is. She has a womb. It has water. All of us come down to this earth ether through the waters of the womb. So I want to just take this first portion and make sure that we're clear. And I'm not saying that we're not, but in honor of women, yes, there are going to be some stories and some stuff that I've dug into about women, mostly staying within the 1700s, just before this era, I guess, of supposed propagandized freedom of the people who were always free, but was propagandized and propped up. And you will see, because we're doing, even in the civics class, parallels. Like there's a parallel existence right now as we speak. The choice is yours as to what you see and where you are and where your energies go. So at these times it's more than being proven that there's a parallel, that there is a something else that has been propagandized at these times, but we cannot forget, women, who we are, the source of humanity through the womb, which is waters. So all of us come down to these waters. So let's just take a look at this. Let's cap up something real quick so we can be in the vein of why Suzanne, as she says, or Sophia, or the woman takes you to the water. So let's take a look at that right now. First, waters. Let's just cap ourselves up so we can, as women, know who we are, and where we're going. We know that there's something about the water, the luminous waters, from the very beginning when the great Father, as they say, said, "What do I look like looking through the luminous waters? What is my image? What do I look like?" And then she appears. So we know that she is the first thought, the image of the spirit. She is the universal womb, for she perceives everything. Humanity wouldn't be here without that womb. So during these times when we're trying to figure out, am I male, am I female, I'm this, I'm that, if you have a womb, you're a womb man. It's womb man, WOMBMAN, meaning womb of man. So what happens? You've seen this before, gotta show it again. Down, she's taking you down to those rivers, to the waters. And from there, you go through those 7 stages of development. Everyone, male or female, we all are taken down to the waters. All right. And then we develop in 7 stages. Woman, we have the download from the ethers, which is the umbilical cord. We have the child that is born on the square, on an angle of 90 degrees in our womb, no matter how tall, short, fat, it doesn't matter. These are principal things. We get cut from the navel and we become navigating elves on the earth plane. So we have been taken down through the waters. This is not just, oh, it sounds right. It is what it is. She takes you down to the river. And then we're all crowned at birth, and we are crowned as a child of humanity. All right. So, quick intro here for us to get into this mindset of never forgetting through the energies of this universe. She takes you through all of those phases and cycles called time. And each of us come to the earth plane via the waters where we endure what we call trials, tribulations, and temptations. Yet, though we walk through this valley of the shadow of death, of course, we fear no evil because we have already been crowned at the birth by Father Mother. And we are of the unshakable race traversing on this earth called Asia or Asa, amongst many other names, meaning the below or the lower realm. So why are we in the shadow of death? We all know why, because the physical, the body it begins, therefore it ends. It's going to be dropped. This is the shadow of our, where are we again? Lower self. It's a shadow. And so question number 2 sort of answers question number 1 because of where we are in this lower realm. And we are here dealing with our 2 selves, as above, so below. And so there is a pattern of manifest for things that are manifest. We are all equipped with specific energies and elements. There's 4 of them. Fire, air, earth, water, and the modes or modalities of this fire, air, earth, and water energies, which are either initiating, they're fixed, or they're mutating. We then come, of course, they say that 5th element of ethers. We come through the ethers, thus the Ethernet cord or umbilical cord. Simple, not to be changed, not to be denied. It is what it is. You are the womb of man, of humanity. So, upon our arrival, whether traversing to and fro on this Asia Major or the Asia Minor, north, east, west, south, we are all endowed with what we call liberty of our conscience that cannot be leaned upon, cannot be bought, cannot be sold, nor transferred, as they are unalienable, inalienable rights of birth, or what we say as birthrights. And we have been crowned already. We have dominion over it all through our mind, of which it is mind that frees or enslaves you. It is not the body. If you free your mind, the body has no other choice but to follow, because the body on this strip, right, is a vessel or a temple in which your soul lives. And your mind controls every movement of the body, voluntarily or involuntarily, as you navigate on this earth ether plane. Now, if your mind is not free, then neither will you be. So the inheritance that was endowed to us all came with some operative tools as companions to or of the mind, as follows. There are 5 automatic genes, 5 of them. All of this we get after coming through this water. It's an inheritance. 5 automatic genes, which we need to use. 4 knowledge, 4 thought, indestructibility, eternal life, and truth. So this comes your inheritance endowed to you while in the womb. If you dig deep within yourself, you'll find it there. How you use it, or how you have been trained to use it or not use it, is a different story, yet not a new one, as there's nothing new under this sun, and all of it has already been written. So these 5 autogenes, when you get down to a more mundane, it's going to be called genetics. They'll say genetics, genes of Isis. That's what Genesis and genetics means. So you don't subscribe to anything but where from whence you came. And we showed this in another class, but it's appropriate now. Where are you from? We have a metaphysical definition of a city, which is the fixed states of conscious or aggregations of your thoughts and various nerve centers of the body. The presiding or central thought meaning of the city is found in the significance of its name. What is your mama's name? Combined with the man, tribe, country, or nation in which it is mentioned. So the womb is the city. This is from whence you hail. They said, where you hail from? I hail from my mother's womb. That's where I hail from. Where am I going? What else I might get into? That's something different or additional. This is from whence you hail, and never forget that, so that your way will be clear with whatever you do and wherever you go. I'm going to read the definition of matriarch later because I didn't mean to put that here right now, but we do come in through a matriarch. If you're coming in through the womb, then you're coming in through the woman, then it's matrix, the matrix is her. And when you come through her, so you can snapshot this. So when you come to Asia Major, Asia Minor, wherever you are, Northeast, West, or South, remember that the society, your relationship to the rest of the society is what status means, quite frankly. But as the society originates with the family, so does the authority or government of the family. That is a maxim. That is not a case law. That is nothing. It's a maxim. That means it is understood. Northeast, West, and South. Period. Just remember where you came from and that you are the ruler, not ruler. You control yourself and your own destiny, endowed with whatever inheritance you received. And so we know that womb that we just talked about is the first school of rule. It is the true kinder or kindergarten. And we'll say this from an excerpt from chapter 1, circle 7, Holy Quran. Now the seed are perfect. Yeah, they're as perfect as the source from which they come. So we have endowed our sons with the seed. Or the seed is a thought, but let's just, for these purposes, give them, you've got that seed or semen or sperm that is electrical energy, is potent. So that seed is perfect, but it is only as perfect as the source from which it came. That's why the Circle 7 Holy Quran, chapter 1 is chapter 2, which are instructions for those. That's the very next thing to understand. So the seed is perfect. Yep, sure is. As perfect as the source from which it came, but they are not unfolded into life made manifest. The child is as perfect as the mother is. So here we are. Sisters, mothers, daughters, stand in your truth and stand in your innocence, the purity of your truth. Masonically speaking, she is the grand architect who built Solomon's, which is the soul of man's temple, the body, in the darkness, in the silence, with no hands and no tools, which is in the womb. So if people can create quote unquote secret societies to tell that truth about humanity and the womb of man, then we got to act like we know too. There is lots and lots of transparency right now at this time. So if we're going to and traverse in our lives, these are things we need to know. So all about those waters, all about the river, womb of man, this distinction is the waters. I'm going to now go into some of the historical messages and tales. I'm telling you, there's a couple of them right now. I'm telling you the two the most that I found interesting, where we're going to dig in and find some things that have occurred that can help us explain some of these cultural characteristics we've picked up. Yeah, it's through things that have happened. Because remember, without history, you can't know law, right? And without knowing where we came from, you can't really know where you're going. We're going to go into looking at some of the things regarding women and things that have occurred and have brought us to where we are today. When people write and they tell stories about things that happen, I find myself being right there and understanding what was going on and finding some very interesting things as to, women, we're very varied. We do different things differently, but we are who we are. These classes are for the mothers, the daughters, the sisters, and all of our children. And we like to bring important messages here for women because we are aware that no nation will ever rise higher than its women. We don't need to guess why. Everything comes through her river, her water. She endows them right there, right? So if she's not right, well, that's why that statement is made. And I trust we understand it in its fullness. So today we're going to go backwards through the ages. Masterminds trace themselves, thus they know, and we are going to specifically be dealing with the sisters, the mothers, the daughters, and some stories. I want to say this though. We all know that all of us were not enslaved. There's free women. So the time frame here is like 1700s. Like I said, it's kind of same with the civics classes, even though we do go back further in some things. But some, some women were not, some people, but some women were not enslaved at all. That's the parallel reality that I'm telling you that, we're living in. And then this one, now I love this. This is by C.H. Risotto. I believe this is Harriet Tubman. So some women come like that, and some women come like, I will break the wall down. I will knock the bricks down and come and get you to save you or to assist you or whatever we have to do, forsake her not. So some women have that energy like that, right? So that's what that's depicted, So let's see what we have. First, first thing I'm going to do is go back to 1664. All right, Maryland passed the first anti-amalgamation law. See, you have to understand this because this is what was going down. We were marrying into the modern European, into the Moabite women and children and so on. It was happening. So they passed an anti-amalgamation law. See, because as we know, when we go back, there was a lot of mixing, especially after under the slavery thing. It wasn't like it was a willing thing; it was a forced thing. It's called rape. Some people do not like that word because it's violent, but that's what it's called. It's called mentally. The mental that these people had is beast and control. And it was very evil things. Now, I know I've mentioned that we had them in slavery first, but we didn't do none of this beast stuff like this. That was not, this is the lowest of the lowest of the lowest self, the beast animal. But anyway, in 1664, Maryland passed the first anti-amalgamation law. This was intended to prevent English women from marrying African men. Interracial marriage was a fairly common practice during the colonial era among white indentured servants and quote unquote, I meant to put the quotes on there because we don't call ourselves blacks, but you know how these readings go, and quote black slaves, as well as in more aristocratic circles. The Puritan law did not deter though, how about this? Many of the colonists, however. One colonial writer observed that mulatto children swarmed in Virginia. Benjamin Franklin. Now this is before the U.S.A company was formed. So Benjamin Franklin had a reputation for fraternizing with African women, as quote unquote African women, and those who came over from what was called or referred to as Africa then, because there were some that certainly did. And also Patrick Henry, Alexander Hilton, Daniel Boone, and Vice President Colonel Richard Johnson. Thomas Jefferson was also believed to have taken slaves as mistresses. Absolutely, it was commonplace. One in particular was Sally Hemings, the subject of a colonist ditty. And it reads, all the damsels on the green, on mountains or in valleys, a lass so luscious never was seen as Monticello Sally. 1664. Now, these rules after independence, when they say after independence, clearly whose independence? We already know, right? Race mixing shifted more towards slave owners having relations with slave women. A popular saying went, the best blood of the South runs in the veins of the slaves. This is the things they would say. During antebellum, that's before the wars, during antebellum days, some theorists contended that mixed marriage was the answer to improved race relations. A white Methodist bishop described mulattoes as the coming race in all its virile perfection. Exquisite tints of delicate brown, handsome features, beautiful eyes, and graceful forms. They're describing the Moabites, mothers, daughters, and sisters. Now, intermarriage bans were lifted during the Reconstruction era in the early 1870s. So they were lifted in the 1870s, getting ready to go into the 19th century, right? But by the end of the decade, so by the 1780s, right? Mixed marriages were declared to be void. Now, around that time, so we're talking about 1880s, right? 10 years from 1870, somewhere in there, that is when the daughters of the American Revolution, which were modern European concubines and slaves, or slaves and concubines to the Moorish sons, they were rebelling against that because the Moorish sons had them in their concubines, and the Moorish sons were selling them on the block, like slave block. Yeah, that's what was that. That's what they were rebelling against. And during that time is when they established the quote unquote marriage license. All right, to put that to an end, they thought. So it wasn't though until the 50s and the 60s that these laws were again lifted. One of the reasons is because Pluto was in Libra, and that challenges or appeals to unions, marriages, and a lot of during that time, that's when what they called or coined shacking up became normal. People were like, I'm not getting married. They may not have known why, but that energy of Libra is where Pluto was, which is the undertone, and it made it so that there's questioning about, getting married. We're not going to get married, like that. So that's part of why that it wasn't until the 50s and the 60s that the laws were again lifted. And we have to remember that they weren't really laws, right? We deal with divine law and conscience. So I want to do this short story. This sister here is came from Senegal. Her name was Phyllis Wheatley, and she was born in 1753, and she passed in 1784. Phyllis was one of the best known poets. Although they say her work wasn't really masterful, Phyllis was able to get in there, and she had an appealing to her. She was writing because she was 7 years old when they brought her over, scantily dressed. It was not not good, the property thing for women, well, for anyone, but we are concentrating on mainly the effects of women, humanity. So she was the best known poet in the pre-19th century, the first quote unquote African American to publish a volume of poetry. Now, I don't know about the first. You're going to find a lot of things. It depends on whose source. They'll say, this person was the first, that person was the first. Please realize that people are gathering information now, and making it more publicly known. So some things they don't know, never did know, and won't know. But her first poem was published in 1767. Now, imagine 1767. Of America and the colonies had not emerged as states yet. Please keep this in mind. And she published it in the Newport Mercury. That was called the newspaper. The newspaper was called Mercury. What does Mercury represent? Communications, information, third house of Gemini, the house of communications. So there was a newspaper called the Newport Mercury. I love it. It's like, all right. And she did this when she was only 13. Now, her writings during the colonial era were puritanical and unemotional. Her main themes were education, virtue, and religion. She impressed all those she met with her wit, her poise, her modesty, and her attractiveness. She was well received by Thomas Jefferson, John Hancock, and George Washington, as well as by the British high society, the aristocracy. She was brought over from Senegal to Boston on a slave boat at the age of 7, poorly attended to, and developed asthma, which caused her to have fragile health that followed her to her death at the age of 31. Her physical state of health declined even further after her runabout husband, who she was warned by friends not to marry him, he abandoned her and her 3 children. She lived in unclean environments after that. Throughout the lean years of the war and the following depression, the assault of racial realities was more than her sickly body or aesthetic soul could withstand. So one night in 1784, she laid on the bed with her youngest child, which was the last surviving of her 3 children. The others died, and her and the baby died of malnutrition, fatigue, and cold. But she was well received. Like, oh, they had a thing in the paper while she's there starving with her child. They liked the way she looked. They enjoyed her presence in terms of her wittiness and the way her persona pushed off, and they enjoyed her for that. So when they say she was liked among John Hancock and Thomas Jefferson, I don't know we can almost guess what that means. And now when it comes to her husband that they said is a runabout husband, we start seeing some of these traits that affect women today. We really do. And men. Oh, it definitely affects the sons as well. But there was really more behind him. He was looked at as, a wankster trying to be a gangster. Let me just put it that way. You know what I mean? He wasn't trustworthy and all of that, even in business dealings. And he always had these high hopes for doing this or doing that and starting the business that he became flimsy, or like a flim flam to other people looking at him because of that, and then to leave his wife and 3 children. It was a sad one. Not all of these are sad, but that parallel reality of the beast energy, nothing too good's going to come out of it. Now, Maria Stewart, there's no photo of her. I didn't find one. 1803 to 1879. Do you see this right here? Now, am I the only one? But I did not know that. Yes, there you go, brother, in the chat. That is absolutely correct. So there's a proof of that right there. And some of these things you're going to find we pick up, and it's part of our personalities or part of our culture and societal norms. And I'm showing you where they came from. Now, I saw Am I Not a Man? I never saw this one. Anybody else tell me, have they ever saw this one? Am I Not a Woman and a Sister? Anyone else ever seen this? That's what I thought. Neither had I. So I thought, oh, the one where am I not a man or something like that. I didn't know that they had one, but this was an insignia for first time seeing it. Yeah, me too. To Tamara, me too. But yeah, well, a lot of things that women did, like we already know it was suppressed. Like we told you when Sojourner Truth was doing her thing and met Frederick Douglass, and she was like freedom for everybody, and he said no, we need to get the freedom for men first. She was like, bye, see you later. That's not what my soul tells me. So she disassociated and went and stayed on her mission. But of course, a lot of these people have met up with each other. This is the era of time. But that's how she saw that. So this was an insignia, if you will, for a lot of the women's rights and movement groups that came up during that time. And then there's a quote from Maria W. Stewart says, how long shall the fair daughters of Africa be compelled to bury their minds and talents beneath a load of iron pots and kettles? Possess the spirit of men, bold and enterprising, fearless and undaunted. Sue for your rights and privileges. You can but die if you make the attempt, and hell, we shall certainly die if you do not. So when she says sue for your rights and privileges, because in the civics class we showed you where mom bets that's already been shown. That's why that's not going to be in here today, because we already did that, where she was the first person to sue and win a case against the U.S.A, or that whole group where they were forming, and that was in 1790. Because they had just come up and formed it, and they're still doing the same thing on the base level of mind and thought. So she's her and Sojourner Truth, and they're both first. But the slight difference is because Sojourner Truth did her case and beat the U.S.A in a law case in 1832. Oh, but please remember, nobody was free. According to their propaganda and that parallel reality that we've been living in, they didn't have emancipation until 1866. So, like, duh. Right. So she says, sue for your right, which was the best remedy. Put a suit on them. Now, a suit, let's look at suit. That means that you suiting them with something. Like somebody try to put something on you, you paint them and you suit them. Like, no, you wear this. You wear this. Command it so to be so. All right, so that was one of her clothes. Again, there was no picture of her that I found yet. And this insignia here that I never knew existed. Am I not a woman and a sister? Look at that, with the shades on your hand. See, that's the mindset. Because if you knew you were a woman and a sister, you would stand in that. And you wouldn't depict yourself with no chains, none of that. That has to, no, because everything is tied together. And vision and thought, and signs and symbols. So here's the sign and the symbol. So I'm not saying that this wasn't happening, because they were being enslaved by the beast. But not all women were enslaved. Born in Hartford, Connecticut, Maria was in 1803, was left an orphan at 5 years of age, was bound out in a clergyman's family. So they were, listen, this is terrible. See, it's one thing to say, I'm going to treat you badly like you're inferior, as the British ones did to the minor European. the true pale faces, right? They just didn't treat them right. They didn't even respect them as being, period. They were Slavics. This other stuff, this is a little different. Like it's lower than low, true beast level. So born in Hartford, Connecticut in 1803, she was left left an orphan at 5 years of age, bound out. And this is why I brought this up. They literally, as you know, think about it, buying and selling people literally as property. Literally as property. For real. And it's like, even if you ran away, somebody gonna pay. Crazy, right? So even though she was bound out into a clergyman's family, she had the seeds of piety and virtue early sown in her mind, but was deprived of the advantages of education though her soul thirsted for knowledge. She left them at 15 years old, that family of age, and attended Sabbath schools until she was 20. Now, she was considered. That's why I put considered in italics, because she was considered the first African American woman to speak in public on political, religious, and racial issues. Now, I know Sojourner did that, but Sojourner did it in the 1800s, but not until later, like 1828. So if you're looking at the time frame, she could have been the first, but none of them are really the first, because if we go back, we've been speaking, but dealing with this time frame, this parallel reality here. So Maria Stewart advocated for the abolition of slavery, for racial uplift and equality, and for women's rights. She was a regular contributor to the Liberator. Now, the Liberator, I should have put it in quotes, that is the name of a newspaper, which was a major abolitionist voice of the times. Now, let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you right off the top right here. During this time, most of the women were working to free the sisters, the people from this enslavement. Their work this is why, have you noticed, or you will, if you haven't already, most of them were about a newspaper. Most of them was about speaking to abolish slavery. Many of them were publishers. All of them wrote, whether it's poetry or what have you. That's what the women did then. And even the free women who weren't ever enslaved joined in to assist in this uplifting of fallen humanity. That's what most women were doing. That's what you're going to find for the most part. For the most part. And others were surviving. So she later moved to Baltimore and eventually to Washington, D.C., where the Freedmen's, now take a note, Freedmen's Hospital, now called Howard University Hospital. Stewart died on December the 17th, 1879. October 8th in 1831, though, we're going to go back, that's what she did. Maria W. Stewart's pamphlet, Religion and the Pure Principles of Morality, the sure foundation on which we must build, went on sale at the offices of the Liberator newspaper. Excerpts are from her pamphlet. She says, charity begins at home, stalking cancer, back in the waters now. And those that provide not for their own are worse than infidels. And then she says, why have not Africa's sons the rights to feel the same? Are not their wives, their sons, and their daughters as dear to them as those of the quote white man? Certainly, God has not deprived them of the divine influence of his Holy Spirit, which is the greatest of all blessings. If they ask me, then why should man any longer deprive his fellow man of equal rights and privileges? So in 1832, see, around the same time, Sojourner Truth was doing her thing, speaking, 1828 to 1832, around it. And matter of fact, 1832 is when she sued and won, beat the U.S.A. So that's Sojourner. But in 1832, Maria Stewart delivered an address at the Franklin Hall in Boston. And this insignia that I showed, this is the insignia that started being used for most of all the women's stuff. All right. So now let's go to this sister right here. I don't know, there's something about her, but I think what it is about her is that she was never a slave. As I said, women were coming in and they were assisting with this horrible reflection or consequences of the beast slavery property mindset. So this is what women were doing, and that's why you're gonna find them pretty much doing the same thing during the time. So Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Now check. She was born in 1825. She passed in 1911. She was born in Baltimore. She was a poet, a fiction writer, a journalist, and an activist. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was the only child of free African American, quote unquote, African American parents. She was the only child, and she was not born into slavery. She was raised by her aunt and uncle after her mother died. When Frances was 3 years old, her mother died. Now, you can look at these patterns. A lot of the mothers, I'm telling you, a lot of the mothers, these, I know a lot of people died sooner than, early, but yeah, a lot of them that were the most impacted lost their mothers at a young age. It's either from slavery or it's from the actions of humanity or it's from sicknesses, and not really sicknesses, because we knew how to do cures and medicines, natural herbs. It was from the viral and the infection that was brought over by the modern Europeans, and we know that. We know that during the Reconstruction era for certain. This is why they started the birth certificate. A lot of people think they started the birth certificate as a counting thing, and it is that too. It is counting, but it was really established by British Moors because they needed to say, why are these people that you're bringing over here to work in your companies bringing all this disease? But anyway, anything that is established by them, that hands are dirty. They are dirty hands. So it doesn't matter. And you should want to throw it out. And the universe today is showing us all that. So that's why we're going back and looking at some of these things. So now, she was raised by her aunt and uncle after her mother died when Frances was 3 years old. She attended the Academy for Negro Youth. Now, this is math here. A school that was run by her uncle until the age of 13. So if she was born in 1825 and you add 13 to that, you're talking 18 what? 38. And she is going to school being educated 1838. There was no emancipation yet. And so we talk about education and what are we going to do? It is what it is. So here you can see by receipt, if you will, that she was educated. Then she found domestic work in a Quaker household where she had access to a wide range of literature. After teaching, she was a teacher. She taught for 2 years in Ohio and Pennsylvania. She embarked on a career as a traveling speaker on the abolitionist circuit. See what I mean? All of this was the assisting to uplift fallen humanity efforts. She helped slaves escape through the Underground Railroad. There were different people. It was a whole network, of people that had to be in place to make that thing happen. So she helped slaves escape through the Underground Railroad and wrote frequently for anti-slavery newspapers, earning her a reputation as the mother of, quote unquote, African American journalism. So here's another sister, never was a slave in this case. And she was a prolific writer. So here's a few things that she wrote. Harper published many collections of poetry, including Autumn Leaves, which was also published as Forest Leaves in 1845. Poems on Miscellaneous Subjects, 1854, which was reprinted 20 times. Sketches of Southern Life, 1872. See, we need to get these books if we can and read them. We really do. Which chronicles Reconstruction, especially this one. We're in the Reconstruction. I got to try and get this one. poem, Reconstruction poems in 1857. The Martyr of Alabama and Other Poems, 1892. The Sparrow's Fall and Other Poems, 1894. And Atlanta Offering, 1895. Harper also published several novels including the Iola Leroy, 1892, and essay collections. Her short story, The Two Offers, was the first short story published by an African American. See how they say first? But see, there's a distinction. They didn't say first thing published. They didn't say first poem. They said first short story published by an African, quote unquote, African American. Her poetry has been collected in Complete Poems of Francis E.W. Harper, 1988 edition, and Mariema Graham, and her prose in A Brighter Coming Day in 1990 edition, Francis Smith Foster. So she married a Fenton Harper in 1860. Before emancipation. She got her education before emancipation also, right? And she was never, she got her education before emancipation. She married Fenton Harper in 1860. He brought to the marriage 3 children of his own, and together they had a daughter. When her husband died in 1864, Harper continued to support her family through speaking engagements. During Reconstruction, she was an activist for, of course, civil liberties. They're going to print it as civil rights, women's rights, and educational opportunities for all. She was superintendent of the colored section of the Philadelphia. See how to do colored African American? We understand this. She was superintendent of the colored section of the Philadelphia and Pennsylvania Women's Christian Temperance Union, co-founder and vice president of the National Association of Colored Women, not of colored people. So now we have, this is where I was telling you, there's a lot of women's things that came up during this time, a lot, and we ought to, if anything, been dealing with that and knowing this stuff and keeping those things for women going. But of course, the suppressions. And she was the vice president of the National Association of Colored Women and a member of the American Women's Suffrage Association. Harper was also the director of the American Association of Colored Youth. And once again, she was never a slave. She was trying to be uplifting. And everybody knows about Ida B. Wells. So I didn't do much on this, but they have said that Ida B. Wells was more of a militant than W.E.B. Du Bois. I'm going to tell you something that really, let me just read this because it's only 1 or 2 paragraphs I got. Ida B. Wells Barnett was an American investigative journalist, sociologist, educator, and early leader in civil rights movement. She was one of the founders of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That's the NAACP. As a founding member of the NAACP, Wells was viewed as even more militant than the Du Bois camp. See, because once women decide they're going to go this way or that way, they go. They all the way or nothing. You know what I mean? I'm not saying sons aren't that way, but women definitely are once they decide. Wells published a newspaper called Free Speech. Yeah, Amendment Bill of Rights 1, right? And Headlight, another newspaper called Headlight in Memphis, Tennessee, until 1892. She was forced to close the paper down after an angry mob attacked her press because she had printed a story about white businessmen who had 3 black competitors. Black, quote unquote. I went to put the quote on and took the B off. Yeah, black, same thing. 3 black, quote unquote, competitors lynched. That Wells, so therefore, it was at this junction with threats against her life that she moved to Chicago. 3 years later, she published The Red Record, tabulated statistics and alleged causes of lynching in the United States. That's what she did. She kept statistics on all of it. The first statistical study of lynching in America. The cover read, respectfully submitted to the 19th century, civilization in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Now, first of all, this is a terrible thing to have to be become the best at keeping records of lynching, but somebody had to do it. Now, I will tell you what this is really. When they had the Louisiana uprise, because it really was about businessmen, it was really about modern. See, they had told so-called Negroes, blacks, coloreds to come down to the South and South Louisiana and take on these manufacturing jobs. They needed people to work. But when they did, the modern European didn't like it. And this is where all those lynchings and the burning of the bodies, it was really a business move in a way, but it was horrible. They did things, they said that someone, they say, oh, you looked at a modern European daughter wrong. You know the stories. We ain't got to go through that. But this was really, she came down as the journalist and she went to take notes for them to print, and they didn't want to print. They didn't want to print the truth. And this is where a lot of discord came. A lot of people may not know that happened, but it did. And so her quote was, surely the humanitarian spirit of this country, which reaches out to denounce the treatment of Russian Jews, the American Christians, the laboring poor of Europe. I said the laboring poor of Europe, the Siberian exiles, and the native women of India will not refuse to lift its voice on this subject. Because remember, India, as we know it today, like Pakistan, the East, they were already here doing business. And that's part of where they start calling us Indian, and the other part is we're indigenous and, like that. So, will not refuse to lift this voice on this subject. If it were known that the cannibals or that savage Indians, and this is a hypothetical, had burnt 3 human beings alive in the past 2 years, the whole of Christendom would be aroused to devise ways and means to put a stop to it. Can you remain silent and inactive when such things are done in our own community and country? Is your duty to humanity in the United States less binding? So there's a distinction of who the United States is, right? Wells became a lifelong authority on lynching. Now, hey, somebody had to keep the statistics, but that's a terrible title to have. Like, that's not humane at all. But she became the lifelong authority on the lynching because she kept the statistics, finding that between the years of 1878 and 1898, about 10,000 Americans were lynched. The following excerpt from an article in June 1910 issue of Original Rights. Now, look at the title of this newspaper. It's called Original Rights Magazine. Provides an example of her investigative style of reporting. And so she says, and this is just in part, on the morning of November 11th last year, a double lynching was reported from Cairo, Illinois, a white man and a Negro. A white girl has been found murdered 2 days before. The bloodhounds, which were brought led to a Negro's house 3 blocks away, ... So here you go. Wells's house in Chicago at 3624 South Dr. Martin Luther King Drive was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1974. I just wanted to add that she had come down to journal this stuff, and now we understand. And that's when all hell broke loose. And it's terrible. I didn't want to put those pictures up because of the burning of the bodies and stuff. Because, who wants to really, think about who wants to teach their children this? Who really wants to teach their children to see these burnt bodies? I understand mothers who don't, but at the same time, we have to know this so we can move on from it and understand that we live in a parallel reality then and now. Your choice. Because this stuff right here is what it happened, and they used it to propagandize to establish your mental perspective. And it still bleeds today. And it's clear. So now we're going to go to Cathay Williams, or is it William Cathay? This is the year, and I chose the original photo that was all scratched up, and they got a better one with Man, there's some artists out here that can take these pictures and they can retouch them and they look great. This sister decides to dress up like a man and go into the military. You heard about it, right? So instead of being Kathy, she did Cathay, but she enlisted, I think, Williams Cathay. Cathay Williams was born in Independence, Missouri, to an enslaved mother and a free father in September 1844. During her adolescence, she worked as a house slave. Union forces occupied Jefferson City during the early stages of the Civil War. Captured slaves were designated as contraband and were forced to serve in military support roles. Before her voluntary enlistment at 17 years old, Williams served as an army cook and washerwoman. Despite the prohibition against women serving in the military, Williams enlisted in the U.S. Army under the male alias William Cathay in November 1866. So she switched it. William Cathay. Now, why did she join? Kathy said she joined the Army because she wanted to make her own living and not to be dependent on relations or on friends. Williams served under the service of General Philip Sheridan and witnessed the Red River Campaign at the Battle of Pea Ridge. Shortly after her enlistment, though, Williams contracted smallpox and was hospitalized, possibly due to the effects of the smallpox, heat, and years of marching. They used to march everywhere. We talk about we're going to go for a jog and for a walk. My goodness. Possibly due to the effects of smallpox, heat, and years of marching, her body showed signs of strain. She was honorably discharged by her commanding officer, Captain Charles E. Clark, on October the 14th, 1968. Williams is also the only known female buffalo soldier. They're the true buffalo soldiers. And I know they always show you brothers, but you do know that sisters was riding horses too. You do know that. We taught them the whole rodeo thing anyway. And horses, this was the plain North America where horses reigned. And so, yes, we rode horses. Women rode horses and knew how to maneuver with them. But that Buffalo Soldier was a group, a specific group. That group was a part of the military where they enlisted, quote unquote, Negroes, coloreds, blacks, and they called that the Buffalo Soldier. Now, why would they call it a Buffalo Soldier when where the buffalo roam is right here, right? So she was the only known female Buffalo Soldier. But I think when she went into after she got honorably discharged, when they found out she was really a woman, she willingly and independently went into the Buffalo Soldier thing, and it was no thing about it. Williams' determination to serve her country demonstrates the extraordinary feats women have accomplished simply trying to live their lives. Now, here's some pictures of her. Over here on the right, listen, you gotta be careful because they'll do renditions of pictures. They'll do AIs of pictures. They'll fix, and when you're going and looking for pictures of a story, you might get a picture of someone that's in it and not that person. But I do know that they do have pictures of this time frame and they would have solid backgrounds. And I'm trying to look at the facial features because they did say that this was her. Right, so she looks straight up like, yeah, I'm the one that's going to get on the horse. I'm the one that's going to be active and outgoing energy physically. Now, over here, this is like a trinity. You know, when they say you see three, the child, and then the middle, and then the third vision. Okay, this right here is a picture of her. Obviously, at some point this was taken. This we say is a child. This right here, this is her of now. Now, I'm sure she has this voice for the LPQTB, whatever. I'm sorry, no disrespect to the letters. Because she's still, as you can see, she's just manly. She's masculine. That's just That's who she is. So anyway, so this is her, and this is, you see how they did this? I showed this. This is where they color rendition. I wanted to do this purposely because I wasn't sure if this was a photo or not at first, but it's a painting, and then they redid it like this. Remember, she was only 17, y'all, when she joined in, 17. And so then this is her now, and I'm sure she speaks for the um, so-called gay rights movement, which I don't condone whatsoever, not because of who you feeling on and having physical interactions, but because there's no such thing. It's a construct. It's about human rights, and in the human rights, you have the right to do whatever you want. So for them to come up with this gay rights thing, it's like a smack in the face to humanity. Quite frankly, if you really want to know. And then it was very narcissistic also, as if, well, we're important because look, people have been acting out in different manners and what they call same sex for years, for centuries. Did you forget about Caligula? Like, come on. It's no biggie diggy like that. So to me, I understand it was about getting attention, but that came at a cost. Came at a cost. And they're gonna feel that cost now because they made a construct. And then they also, like, who cares who you sleep with? So yeah, so that was a slap in the face to rights, humanity, to me, my opinion. And I have nothing against anyone who is or is not. I don't. But we're looking at this, right? So now everybody knows about Harriet Tubman, and I didn't want to put anything. What could you add? But I found something, and I talked to one or two people, and they were like, nah, we didn't know that. It was in this book. So I just wanted to share that comment that she made with you. But first, of course, 1822 to 1913 when she passed. They're not really sure what year she was born. Somewhere between 20 and 22 or 21 and 22. Most people use the 1822. She was born into slavery on Maryland's Eastern Shore in 1822. Tubman was named Araminta. Now, remember I told you all that I saw a book and it said Araminta Ross Bay. I don't know where the book is. It was over the years. I saw it myself. It was there. And then when I saw the movie Harriet Tubman, and she said, at that time, she said they called her Little Minty. I knew as a clue, as a key, that Minty is short for Araminta, but no one had ever written that her real name was Araminta until now. So by me knowing that she was Araminta Ross Bay, I knew that when she said Little Minty, that's tying that to truth to this degree. And then when she did her speech, which was absolutely awesome, Oprah Winfrey had produced it. And then all of a sudden, like, she just does this awesome speech and then it doesn't come on anymore. Like, look, she was taking everything to another level. Like, yeah, come on, let's get this. And then they don't show anymore and share any more information. And we all know why. But when she did the speech and she said, I am not Harriet, nor was I named Tubman. Neither of these were her name. Not Harriet, not Tubman. Tubman she took on for her husband, and Harriet had something to do with her mother. But that was not who she was. So she was named Araminta by her enslaved parents. Their name was Ben and Rit Ross. She was nearly killed at the age of 13, these golden numbers here, by a blow to her head. Minty recovered and grew strong and determined to be free. That's why she would have those headaches. And because I think of the slave master or something, you know how they mistreated her, hit her. But check this out. She had a $40,000 reward on her head. That was a lot back then. That was a whole lot. Most people had $100 reward for an escaped slave, but 40,000. Tubman personally rescued over 300 slaves in 19 trips to the South. She was known to say, I never ran a train off the track and I never lost a passenger. So she became known as the Moses, of course, of her people. And you see, I try to find some pictures because they always try to give you the pictures that are of the worst. So you see this picture, she's younger, you know what I mean? Because that's around the time when she started on her mission, not when the person is, 90 years old and that's all the picture you're going to show. But I know that getting photos is kind of hard also, just getting the information, period. So that'll get better. So here she became known as Moses of her people. Born enslaved, she escaped and fled north at the age of 28. Tubman served for 3 years as a spy, a scout, and nurse in the Union Army during the Civil War. Now, let's explain that in brief. When they said contraband, that was because the South sent a couple of brothers, and I have a really great picture of it, not today, but somewhere, to go and see what was going on. What ended up happening is they said, well, you know what? We are not going to, we can capture you and call you contraband, and we're going to pay you to wash our clothes, to do some, to help out and do some stuff. So there was like double spy stuff. So they said, we're not sending these brothers back. Those two brothers, we're not sending them back. We captured them, but they actually started paying them. And this is the camp that she's in, and that's where Fort Monroe, has, Obama just named it a national landmark. So that's another whole story. So that's what this means. And she was there as a nurse, and she helped a lot of people, the troops, go into battle. She was awesome, right? She did it all. She was the only female to successfully undertake operations in enemy territory. She could go up in the enemy territory. Like, this is some awesome stuff, right? When you really think about it. When you really think about it, what spirit was with her to take 300 people, herself really all the way to Philadelphia, and then bring more people. That's some awesome stuff. But let me tell you how she felt about it, or why she said she did it. So, to take him into enemy territory, and was the first and probably the only female to ever lead American troops into battle. This is a picture that you've all seen of her family. That's widely spread. And in 1849, Harriet learned that she and her, now listen to this. This is what we women, mothers, had to endure. Imagine just the thought of it. In 1849, Harriet learned that she and her brothers Ben and Henry were to be sold. Financial difficulties of slave owners frequently precipitated sale of slaves and other property. The family had been broken before. Three of Tubman's older sisters, Maria, Riddy, Lena, and Soph, I guess from Sophia, right, were sold to the deep South, and they were lost forever to the family and to the history. Now, this is what she said. Now, I put it up here just the way they have it because she didn't spell well, but I cannot read it the way I could, but I'm not going to be acting on this. I'm going to read it right. This is, I don't know if you've ever heard this. She wrote, long ago, when the Lord told me to go free my people, I said, no, Lord, I can't go. Don't ask me. But he came another time. I saw him just as plain. Then I said again, Lord, go away. Get some better educated person. Get a person with more culture than I have. Go away, Lord. But then he came back the third time. We all know three is his charm, right? And speak to me just as he did to Moses. And he said, Harriet, I want you. And I knew then I must do what he bid me to do. Now, do you suppose he wanted me to do this just for a day or a week? No. The Lord who told me to take care of my people meant me to do it just so long as I live. And so I do what he told me to do. Now that's her personal. Oh, there's another picture too that I found that I like, because there's more in the times when she was doing the thing. So that's like the spirit talked to her. So now during that time, if someone had said, oh, the spirit talked to me, oh, you crazy, you crazy, you out of your mind. God didn't come, the spirit didn't talk to you. The spirit talks to us every day in our own thoughts. And these were her thoughts. And this is what she says inspired her as to why she did it. It was her mission to do. Clearly, it was her mission to do. She did it successfully. She did it against all odds. She did it using navigation of the earth plane, North Star, astrology. She did it and did what the spirit told her to do. Yes, came here to do what she did. Exactly. We all have a mission. There's a table for us all. So I wanted to share about that. So let's move on to Stagecoach Mary. Wow. This is a heck of a story.
There's a river somewhere, flows through the lives of everyone, and it flows through the valleys and the mountains and the meadows of time. There's a star in the sky, brighten the lives of everyone. I know it brightens the valleys and the mountains and the meadows of time. Yes, it do. 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 Yes, it do.